Welcome to another episode of the Minx Labrada Mysterious World podcast. Once again, I am Minx Labrada. Welcome to our mysterious world. And I think one of the mysteries facing millennials and Gen Z today is the 80s. Who are all these crazy people that are older than us that lived through the 80s? And what is their deal? Well, I'll tell you what our deal is in a little bit after we get to our sponsor. Let's talk about Bitcoin. That's right. I hold Bitcoin. You should too. I don't know why you don't. It's not like I'm a genius. Is all I did was figure out that it's not a depreciating asset. It's an appreciating asset. It's a new asset class, according to Michael Saylor. And his company was about to go out of business, MicroStrategies, and they made a bold decision to take everything they had and put it into Bitcoin, and they were right. Does that make him a genius? You know what? I don't know, but he is definitely a futurist, and I would highly recommend listening to a Michael Saylor interview about the subject of Bitcoin. You know, you can listen to Max Kaiser too. Max Kaiser is also very funny, and they use the term hyper-Bitcoinization. So there you go. To me, Bitcoin is how you ensure a future where we don't destroy ourselves. Maybe some of the lost civilizations that we find remnants of in these monolithic stone works and these megalithic stone constructions where the stone has been carved and they're placed so precisely that you can't even get a piece of paper in between them. The geometric, what do they call that? I know there's an exact name for what that is. If somebody wants to comment down below and correct me, I would appreciate that. And maybe they just didn't invent Bitcoin in time and human greed took over. And the lords of Atlantis decided, hey, we'll just keep lying to everybody and meanwhile use our death ray. I don't know. And maybe that's what swallowed them up. I think Bitcoin being built for the future means prosperity for everybody. You have to let the experiment run its course. It's a proof of concept though. It's not really an experiment anymore. Really, the experiment that is failing is fiat currency. And it seems like it is designed on purpose to fail as we start to understand that the lords of fiat essentially know it's worthless. They get you to agree that it's worth something, and they inflate it over time, which over time allows them to accumulate hard assets like real estate and whatnot. Okay, so you're out there working 40 hours a week for a depreciating dollar. Any currency you have depreciates. When, if you were being paid with Bitcoin, an appreciating asset, you could work for a time, maybe 10 years, and then just retire because you have enough Bitcoin. So I think a lot of fear is out there about the central banking digital currency. They're so far behind and they just don't have the players, okay? The Bitcoin robot I represented here versus this little chump down there basically represents a pro team versus amateur hour. I just left government service a few weeks ago. In part, I got done with amateur hour. Nobody understood what I was doing. Audiovisual production specialist is what they called it. Basically, I got a degree in digital cinematography. And I was supposed to be making training videos for the Navy. Well, in 2 days here at home, I shot and produced more content than I did the entire time at a year and a half I was at the Navy. And it's not because I wasn't doing anything. It's because the process is so slow and so ridiculous. And also you got egos in the way. Like I even told the guy, hey, if you give me the spreadsheet, I took project management. I can manage a project, give me all the phone numbers to the 20 some odd different schoolhouses under us. And I could get these people going and I can get us some content running. That never happened. So that's kind of what I'm talking about. You got amateur hour versus pro, and it's just insurmountable. They're not going to do it. Gary Gensler's like a little troll, and I even forgot the other guy. He's a SEC. Everything's it's not money. It's what do they call it? Whatever they call it. Little legalese terms to get people to try to stay away. Granted, they can't really touch Bitcoin because Bitcoin's decentralized. Thank you very much, Satoshi. He did that. He created Bitcoin and then just disappeared. That's right. So when you're out there in the open and you're centralized, you're opening yourself up to attack or control. And the central banking cartel, that's all they want. And when you get to the heart of it, especially now with these revelations coming out about how the chairman of the Fed was like, yeah, man, I'm getting in the way of Trump. I'm doing this for the good of the world. Well, really? No wars when Trump was in office? It was just y'all just didn't make enough money when he was in office? That's it, really, isn't it? Because you get a percentage off of every dollar you print illegally in violation of the U.S. Department of Treasury. You are counterfeiting American currency. You are. I don't care if there's an act. And we're all using counterfeit currency when you use the dollar. It does say in God we trust. Somebody posted something recently, and I'm going to see if I can find it, where they flipped the face like George Washington used to be facing in God we trust. And then without us even knowing it, they flipped him this way, and in God we trust is behind his head. I think that's significant, seeing what we're seeing in government right now. I really do. Oh, pardon me, while I have a nice sip of whole organic milk from grass-fed cows with the cream on top. Highly recommend the carnivore diet. Oh man, that is yummy, yummy. It's like dessert almost when yeah, it really is. It's good. Okay, let's go ahead and get into it. In the 80s, why was the 80s so much better for a lot of things, not everything, than it is now? Well, one of them was cheap rock and roll concerts. You could go to, like if you lived in Pensacola, we didn't have the Pensacola Civic Center right off the bat. In fact, I'm not exactly sure it's called that. We've got a multi-use type arena thing. They have monster trucks in there sometimes. They have hockey and rock concerts. Back in the day, if you wanted to see that, you could go to Mobile. They still have the same one. And you could go to Biloxi, or if your parents were really loose and liberal, you could go to New Orleans, which mine weren't that loose. But, thinking about it, I'm lucky that I was around when they let me go, to Mobile and to Mississippi with, older friends that drove. I was 13 and they were like, yeah, all right, this guy seems reasonable. Right? So, maybe my parents were a little bit into the cocktails back then, not really paying attention, a little clueless, but what are you going to do? I think all parents a bit clueless about what their kid might do. I don't know. But there was a sense in the 80s, this was all okay. Okay? Nobody worried about getting shot or stabbed. You did see fights, but that environment definitely sends home the classic Bill Hicks joke. Two people at a rock concert fighting. Are they drunk or stoned? And the audience goes, drunk. He's like, yeah, because, you know, stoned people, it's almost impossible to fight. You know, bump into a guy, stoned. Hey, hey, hey. You know, I mean, no one's aggressive like they are now, which is just crazy. And part of this delve into the wonderful world of the 80s is because there have been so many videos posted of kids beating the shit out of each other and a lot of black on white crime and it's ridiculous. And I don't want to see the inverse opposite reaction from lunatics that are going to want to take violent action against a group for a few videos. Okay. It's not a solution. The solution is social order, and social order being respect and learning how to deal with emotions, right? You know, not too much good to say about Al Gore, but I will say that when he ran for president, Tipper Gore was out there talking about emotions, children's emotions, and it was true. She was right on. And the thing is, she said something to the effect of, okay, you know, we send kids through 4 years of high school. They learn math and they learn English, and they have to get to college before they learn about emotions. You know, like maybe there was I don't think there was any psychology courses at all, but is all you really need is like a real basic, like maybe a Zig Ziglar goals course with, you know, how to manage your emotions, you know, course, you know, and maybe a meditation club, you know, not like a Satan club. That's stupid. And, you know, if y'all want to do a Bible club, you know, that's great. But I remember the kids in Bible school or Bible club in high school in the 80s would kind of come after you, and they didn't get like religion they didn't seem to get religion to me as a spiritual involvement, emotional involvement of self advancement in the spiritual world. They seem to use it as an ego anchor, as in, you know, I read all this about the Bible. I've memorized all these verses. Everything you say, I can answer in Bible verse. And, you know, it was all accusatory and you're living wrong and all this. And maybe some people do need to be shown that, told that if, you know, if the guy's drunk face down in a gutter, okay, preach to that guy. But just, you know, Johnny BMX or rando dude, you know, you want to tell me why, you know, riding a BMX bike and boogie boarding and maybe smoking a joint with some friends on a weekend, that's sending me to hell? Come on. You're not pulling people in with that message. All right. Love and tolerance is what I was always taught. But, you know, the beautiful thing about these shows is there was this sense of optimism before you went, and you couldn't just watch a band on TV, not with much impact. And even when MTV came out, you know, it's not as good as a show. It was a little 4:3 aspect ratio TV, you know, maybe 22 inches, you know, was kind of a big set back then. You know, maybe a little bigger back towards the late 90s before HD came out. There were like giant tube TVs that were like, you know, 40 inch. They, you know, weighed a ton. And I even know a guy that had an HD tube TV that when he moved out of his house, it was so heavy, he and I couldn't lift it together. And he was just done. He's like, I'm just leaving. He just left it in his house. I'm sure it still works. 1080p tube HD television. I guess that was the thing for a little while. But there was just this sense that when you went there, you could cut loose, but nobody was going to cut loose so bad where like people nobody wanted to hurt anybody. Occasionally, like I said, there were some fights. And yeah, I get it. The rock concerts I'm talking about were pretty much all white people. Okay. I saw a black dude at the Police. And when we saw the Who in 83, yeah, there was a dressed to the nines black couple that came down the steps in the Mississippi Coast Coliseum, and they had some seats and nothing was reserved. But I do remember a guy sitting alone moved over and let them have like the aisle seat. And the dude had a suit on with a skinny tie, and the lady had on like this little pillbox hat and real classically like late 60s dress up and like this clamshell purse. And we were all really stoned. So we were, I had to poke my friend and be like, hey, this weed's not that good. They're real, right? Like, yeah. Because we'd never seen a black couple dressed to the nines like that at a rock show. It was cool, And while I'm watching it, we were like a little up above them, probably at about let's say the crowd's here. So maybe the band was at like my 2 o'clock position and down at about, I don't know, maybe about 17 degrees elevation, right? So they were kind of between us and Pete Townsend, and then you had Roger Daltrey and John Entwistle, and then Kenny Jones was the drummer. Great show, right? First time I saw Very Lights, which was interesting, which is like common now everywhere. But back then, that was a really big deal. But I do remember thinking that during the show, wow, man, these, I saw them when the Daylighters came on, like at the end, and I was like, wow, they're like still here. They didn't like come just for one show, or they weren't lost. They were like, into the Who. Almost kind of wondering now also if that woman was maybe involved in a production of Tommy, and maybe she played the Acid Queen, or, maybe they're just fans, which is great. Which, I remember messing with this woman years ago. I was at a bank and I was like, hey, you going to the Pensacola Spring Fest, which was a big festival they'd have here in Pensacola on the streets. And there'd be like 4 or 5 stages. And it was so much fun in the 90s. And there was this black woman, and I went to this bank, and I didn't really mean to mess with her, but I said, hey, you going to Springfest? Just because right? And she said, I don't know. Is there any black music at it? And I went, what do you mean black music? I go, there's no color and sounds of, and, and I acted dumb, and I had her explain it to me. And I tried to be thoughtful about it. And I go, well, you know what? I go, blues and jazz and funk are ubiquitous. And I just walked away because I didn't want to deal with it anymore. But it's so strange to me how it seems that attitudes have gotten worse for like public events, where you have to, we didn't have to walk through metal detectors in the 80s to go to a concert. Okay. And then this is a really good one too, showing people with their little metal things. That I guess you could still do that, but you'd have to take your metal bracelet off and put it through the scanner and walk through and get wanded, which works, which is fine. I'm not saying I'm against security measures in today's climate. Is what I'm saying is the culture in the 80s, we didn't need metal detectors because we were cool. We chilled. Lots of mischief, lots of fun, but nobody was out to hurt anybody. Nobody wanted to kill anybody. That was like the last thing on anybody's mind. Maybe you'd get your ass beat if you were stupid, but not too many people were going around getting killed. So that was a little strange. Now, also to kind of cement home just another story about how insane the 80s were, and maybe a little contradictory to my statement that nobody wanted to hurt each other, because in this instant, there seemed to be a pretty massive disregard for personal safety of others. And as what happened was I saw ZZ Top on the El Loco tour. That would be their hit song, Tube Snake Boogie, came from that album. Yeah, that's a good one. I Got a Girl That Lives on a Hill. Yeah, that's a good one. But as what happened was, this was Mobile, Alabama on New Year's Day. And being the South, people snuck fireworks in. And I literally saw like a 3-ounce bottle rocket. I don't know if you've ever been to the Mississippi or the Mobile arena. I don't even know what it's called. But it's perfectly round. And there's some bleachers on the top round part, and then it's just one big open floor. And back in the day, they didn't put seats out. The first time I ever saw seats was a concert in Pensacola when Kiss opened up the Pensacola Civic Center, and it was assigned seating, and it hadn't really done it too many times since. And well, maybe since, but anyway, most are open floor. But that was like, that was brand new, and I guess management just wasn't having it. But I don't know how big the Mississippi one is, but big enough to have like a major concert. And I literally saw a 3-ounce bottle rocket go all the way across and poof, blow up over people. And then, stick and the papers coming down on them. A couple times, my friend was like, look out. And I like dodged, like, something came out of the stands just past us and, bounced off, and, little bottle rockets. You don't want one of those blowing up by your head. And then another thing that was really funny that happened was, and I'm saying that was really funny because we were kind of enjoying it, even though it was mildly dangerous. We didn't throw fireworks ourselves, just the fact that we were like, oh my God, yeah, that's right. Alabama, New Year's Day at a ZZ Top concert in the 80s. Do the math, right? We got it, right? It was no problem. It was fun. Made it more fun, really. But at one point, somebody threw a gross of jumping jacks, which is a gross, I want to say is 144 packs, and each pack, I think, was 12. But it was like a big, it looks like about a case of dog food, about that kind of thing. And they lit it. I guess they all went off, but maybe, I don't know how they did it. But anyway, I didn't actually see the gross get thrown into the crowd. Is what I saw was all of a sudden a bunch of people looking down, and they were glowing red, and then they were glowing green, and then they were glowing white. And then, there's a bunch of smoke around and people kind of dissipated because of all that gunpowder type of smelling smoke. And it doesn't taste good in your mouth either. It's nasty. But that little area cleared out. But that was, that's what happened. And I don't know if anybody was injured during it, but I guarantee you there was no intention to actually really hurt somebody. Yeah, it was done from drunks, and it was done by people with casual disregard for safety. Definitely not my speed. I'm totally into safety. I was a safety NCOIC when I was in the Marines for my unit. And, like if you were burning classified documents by the paint locker, I made them move it. It's tough. I don't care if you're a captain and I'm a corporal. You're breaking regulations. And if you want me to report this, then don't put it out. Yeah, it happened. But it was a lot of fun watching all this go down. And the moral of the story is we were able to cut loose without hurting people. Granted, in the 90s, I did see some lunatic, maybe it was early 2000s. Anyway, during 4th of July, they do a fireworks show in Pensacola, and you essentially shut down like the bridge and Bayfront Parkway, and because people are stopped and watching, or anyway, I don't know if they do that anymore, but they shut the street down. You can ride bikes and walk, and it's nice. They turn the road into a park. Well, one evening, some idiot from a boat shot a bottle rocket into the crowd, which maybe not as random, but I don't know, maybe just because there were lawyers around. But I did see a lawyer give that person a business card and say, I can't help you because I saw it. He goes, but this is a good firm to call, for personal injury. And, I heard it all and I just thought like, wow, I wonder if there are any personal injury lawsuits after that ZZ Top concert. And I'm guessing not, nobody had digital cameras back then. And the other thing too, is if you went to a concert and other people went to a concert, you got to talk about it with them for days and hours and months. And we would do that because that was like a really big event. That was like, oh, okay. And even after MTV came along and you started seeing more bands on television, it did, and then interviews and all, and then they ruined it and made it all about them and not about the fans and music anymore. But it was cool because, there was this kind of black t-shirt thing where all the concert shirts were black. And I realized at one point, wow, myself and all my friends, we all wear black t-shirts with, Van Halen or Rush or ZZ Top or whoever. I didn't like Def Leppard. I always thought they were a little too simplistic for me. It's like one of them things. Even I'm still not that great at playing by ear, but I remember figuring out one of their songs, and just going, God, this is crap. Kind of based on the fact that I knew I was a crap guitarist and I figured it out. Come on, man. Anyway, if you're a Def Leppard fan, you hate me now. I'm not apologizing. That's just the way life is sometimes. So go deal with it. You should have been more of an Iron Maiden or Judas Priest fan and not the kind of soft metal. I never really even thought they were metal of Def Leppard, which there's a ton of bands with 1 syllable, 2 syllable names trying to copy Led Zeppelin. And then they thought, I guess people thought, oh, since Van Halen made it, that was their real name, man, we got to do this, 1 syllable, 2 syllable name thing, which is also the impetus for the name Wild Stallion, which was the Bill and Ted band. Anyway, so there you go. I do think, however, when you go see a band and they do have pyrotechnics, you'll see that today, and that's cool. And it's fun to kind of feel the heat and whatnot. But it's nothing compares to being in the middle of a bottle rocket battle in Mobile at a ZZ Top concert in the 80s. I'm sorry you missed it. I really am. If there's ever a way to bring that back as a simulation, I'm not sure there's ever really enough computing power to do it, because a lot of these images here I'm showing you are AI, and none of them come close to capturing like every different description I put, and however detailed, this is what I got. So it's just something that if you were alive at the time, it was something to appreciate. Granted, life is a lot better now in a lot of different ways. Technology has really made things help. This AI Mid-Journey really helps me do my podcast, where I can generate images to go with what's on my mind. But like I said, the 80s were just an era that we lost in terms, there was that positivity about America. Ronald Reagan was president. I know this supermodel that told me she was making a ton of money in the 80s. And then after Reagan went away, things really kind of dried up. And not like she got ugly or old. She was still working, just not as much money. It's a really strange era. But I think is what happened was, and it probably happened in the fashion industry too, it was explained that what happened to Hollywood was the backlots where they would have like the Roman Village and the Western Village and all the different kind of things they could shoot, and it was already set up. Those went away and became parking lots. And then as what happened was focus groups and data sets replaced just listening to the creator. They didn't want to take chances anymore. Listen, now they use these focus groups, and well, you've seen the trash that's been shared and been produced since, I want to say, the 90s had some good films, and there are still some good films now, but predominantly it's all substandard, and it's all affected somehow in a weird way that it shouldn't be, because you've got the corporate model driving the creator, and the only creators that, well, I'm not saying only, but I think a good case in point is if you look at the Venture Brothers cartoon and what happened to them, and essentially they were silenced because they gave the goose away. I'm not going to give it away. If you see the last episode in the regular series before they regrouped and just made a movie to kind of appease their fans, they were biting the hand that feeds, for sure. I highly recommend that. And it's one of those things, kind of like The Matrix, like so close to the truth, they got punished for it. Apparently they didn't get punished so bad. They were tricked into becoming women, like the Wachowski sisters are now. They used to be the Wachowski brothers. And I'm never going to apologize for that. I 100% think that the original Matrix film gave away, in metaphor, too much information. It's probably happening on a metaphysical, pan-dimensional type of level where humans are being fed on for strife, which is why I highly recommend meditation, because it elevates you above being their food, because it elevates your mood, and they can't feed on elevated moods. It's too high of a frequency for them. So now is what makes me think about the 80s. Was the 80s a higher frequency time than now? It doesn't seem so. I think we're in a higher frequency, but I have a feeling that the violence that we're seeing, there's way more cameras. So maybe the violence never changed. Maybe the black on white violence, maybe the black on white and the black on black violence never has gotten any different. It's always been the same. But now everybody's got a phone, right? And if you got a big old phone, then you can take a big old HD video of it. And by the way, stop shooting portrait, shoot landscape. For the love of God, turn your camera to the side, shoot landscape. It shouldn't even be a conversation anymore. But I do think that there is some evidence to suggest that like-minded people get along than forced diversity gets along. Okay? And what I mean by that is, like I said, at these concerts, all the shows I seen, I saw 4 black people, one at a Van Halen, and it was Van Halen 1984, and he got really drunk and fell asleep and really only seemed to kind of respond to Jump and seemed lost during the rest of it. So you got your Jump fan. Okay, he showed up. The Police, I totally get it. They're ubiquitous. And the guy, the black guy there, he had a mohawk, and he had some like special dance for King of Pain. So, all right, whatever. And then the older couple at the Who concert, dressed to the nines, real fans, for sure. And I'm still blown away by the way they're dressed. Almost kind of wondering if they're aliens, but I don't think they're aliens. They were just, they just dressed really nice going to a show. I don't blame them. The other thing too is the concerts were so cheap back then. Like I saw the Who for $15, and that was like the most expensive ticket I ever bought to date. I think Van Halen back then was $12.50. You know, and I know they were subsidized by the big evil record companies, and the record companies got, you know, all sorts of dirt on them. I highly recommend was it a white paper? I guess just an essay from Steve Albini about what's wrong with the music industry. And Steve Albini was the producer for, I want to say Nirvana's Nevermind and a bunch of other stuff. Very interesting guy. And, you know, I think one of the things that I did, you know, I was really out of control as a young man. I will say that. I'll admit that, which is, you know, I was talking to another Marine friend of mine. We were in high school together, and we were at this Van Halen concert together I'm about to tell you about, 1985. It was the 1984 World Tour. And probably within a year of Dave leaving the band. And it was a great show. And, you know, this is something I think illustrates the intent of mischief and fun and maybe a little bit of a trick, but I didn't hurt anybody and I didn't want to hurt anybody. And I feel bad if I find out later that, you know, I'm never going to find out because everybody was stoned and drunk. And if the guy even remembers what happened, and I don't know who it happened to, as I will illustrate in the story, but I was sitting at this Van Halen concert on the rail, and I'd seen Van Halen twice before. Fair warning, I was 13 years old, and I was right in front of the stage on the rail, right in front of Eddie Van Halen, because I was a guitar player, and I want to see this cat, right? And I was pretty strong, so the crowd's pushing on me. I'm holding on to the barrier, and, you know, that's where that football weightlifting came into play, because I was able to handle it. And I do remember holding on to my pee. I really had to pee like before the first act left, and I didn't want to lose my spot, so I stayed there. And the second time I saw him, I didn't make the rail and ended up lost in the sea of, couldn't really get close to the stage or you're out of control. It was before mosh pits, but it was just people pushing and it just sucked. So I walked way back and I got by the board, and that's always a good alternative if you can be where the soundboard is, because he's mixing for him or her, and you get a good stereo mix in whatever hall you're in if you sit by the board. There's a little tip. But excuse me. At this certain time, I sat down at about, I don't know, the very first seat at the Mississippi Coast Coliseum before the floor. And then there was a rail there. So we're about 2 or 3 feet above all these heads, you know, in front of you, there's just all these people. It's a sea of heads. And which is what it looks like when you're high. And then also, you know, people are already starting to squish because, you know, the big lights are on in the house. The house lights haven't turned on yet. And, you know, people know what's coming. They know Van Halen's getting ready to come on. So people are trying to get up there and get their spot. You're right. This is pushy. That's what it was. It was like a push fest. So I'm sitting there next to my friend's brother who came with us. I drove 3 of us in my mom's Toyota Tercel. And it was kind of a tough car. I remember parking. We couldn't find parking inside the Coliseum, and I just drove up onto a concrete island. I mean, that, you know, and that Toyota Tercel is the same car that went on to become the all-wheel drive version that Jesse Pinkman drove in Breaking Bad. So my parents had like the front-wheel drive little hatchback version of that car, and it'd probably still be running if they would have kept it. Those, I still see them on the road. So I don't know what Toyota was doing in the 80s, but they were making unbreakable machines. So we're just sitting there, and I catch like something out of the corner of my eye right when I hear a guy go, "Look out!" And I just you know, you react, and I did that, and right when I did that, a corn dog flew past my head, and it hit the top rail, and it did a backflip and like landed right between my feet. And everybody that knows me is already probably laughing because they know, you know, wow, this guy's got a history of throwing food. I've did it a lot. We used to even go when you could get bean burritos from Taco Bell for 60 cents, we'd go get like $3 or $4 worth on a Friday night. And, you know, some of the kids were throwing water balloons at each other. No, we were throwing bean burritos because there was a really good splat effect. And if you had louvers on the back of your car, that was just slice and dice time. You just throw it at the louvers. And God help you if you parked a car with an open window. Yeah, we got those too. I don't know how hard that would be to clean out, but I think if you parked a car with an open window on the street at night, that meant you were drunk, which probably meant the guy slept late, which meant all that bean paste and cheese and sour, whatever was in there, I don't know what they put in there, that was splattered on the inside of the windshield. Well, now that got to bake while drunk boy, you know, mischief. All right. I'm sure the karmic load from that, I've already dealt with it, but there's also an interesting hypothesis I have about karma that I will share with you after this story. So this corn dog does a backflip and lands right between my feet. Well, I pick it up and it's on the stick, right? And it was obvious whoever did this was also a fellow mischief person, because the old ketchup and mustard dispensers, we didn't have the push down big giant 5-gallon thing we have now. We had the little tube, and the red one was ketchup, and it had a little cone where the ketchup came out of, and then there was a yellow one for the mustard. And is what you could do is you could force that little cone in the corn dog and squeeze it and basically inject it like a Twinkie. So blah, this thing had like 4 little injection holes on it, and it was just sloppy. And I don't know how it stayed together when it landed between my feet, but I was kind of like moving it around on the stick, showing my friend going, look, he's like, ew, ew, get it away from me. But it was just, you know, you could slide it. And I'm thinking like, all right, when the lights go out, I got a pole arm here, and I'm going to sling this corn dog off the stick. Yeah, that's right. I don't want to put out an eye. I don't want to hurt anybody. You never throw a corn dog at someone with the stick. There's a video of Katy Perry throwing corn dogs all with the stick. No. That is incorrect. You use the stick as the pole arm to sling the corn dog missile. That's how it works. Don't put out an eye. Granted, perhaps with which the speed that I launched the corn dog, the speed alone of the corn dog may have hurt somebody. I hope not. Let's go ahead and finish what happened. So we're sitting there, and I got the corn dog, and like the lights go out, and you hear the announcer, I guess it's normally the roadie, right? Or the manager. Ladies and gentlemen, Van Halen. And the lights go up, blah, daylighters go up, and the first chord goes out. Ow. And whack, I just let it fly, as illustrated here. Off the stick. Now it's doing a line drive over just a sea of heads, right? And it's spinning so fast, it kind of looks like Saturn, because as it's spinning, and it's there's like a ring of Saturn of mustard and ketchup around it as this corn dog's spinning over the crowd. And then right when the lights changed, I saw it like lose altitude, and just, you know, somebody was out there, yay, Van Halen, bah, you know. And it was the 1984 concert, so it was most likely I hit somebody that was a fan of Jump. And if you're a Van Halen fan, you know, Jump was kind of a letdown. Like, whatever, it's a pop song. Good for them, you know. But it wasn't Light Up the Sky or Fire or Unchained or something like that. It was, right, it was pretty poppy. And, you know, I'm never really going to find out what happened here. The the Midjourney AI is representing my corn dog as like some kind of super foot-long dog, but that's all right. Kind of gets the point across. Something wet and splattery and meaty and enriched wheat, floury crap just spitting over people. Blah, 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 just leaving I'm sure I just dotted a whole line of people with just ketchup and mustard. There's probably people that just look freckled after that happened. And, then that sucker started to lose altitude and it just went home. And I don't know, I'll never know, unless there's time travel, I'm going to find out. If it just hit one guy, like a friend of mine goes, "Oh yeah, man, it wrapped around the guy's head." And I'm like, yeah, that might have happened. And then another idea I had was that, what if it was like somebody with the big hair in the 80s and it ramped off the hair and like broke up and then like hit 12 people, like just splash damage. I don't know. And, there's a representation of a guy getting hit with a corn dog. And, hopefully it was a guy like this with the hair, because there were guys at the Van Halen concert that would, I think before cosplay and fanboy stuff started, it was still going on, because there was this guy that would try to dress like David Lee Roth. And there was another guy that always dressed like Eddie Van Halen. They were friends, but they would always show up. But it wasn't enough to dress like them. They tried their best to emulate what they thought they acted like, which made them douchebags. Big time. So hopefully that guy was somebody that got nailed with the corn dog. And, you never know. Here's another representation of a guy not having a great time. This guy looks a little bit more punk rock than 80s. I don't really remember, but the glossy sheen of watered down ketchup on the side of his face, I think that's ballpark. And, yeah. And, it must have hit home and it must have splattered because nobody threw anything back. Now, occasionally I'd be at a show and once I was at a show and somebody started throwing eggs at the crowd, and the band was so good. And I even think it was the Van Halen Diver Down tour, but nobody cared. It didn't do anything. There was so much energy coming from the stage. You saw a couple eggs splatter and then they ran out. And then, you saw kind of, a circle of guys and some police and whatever, later. But whatever. The other thing that was really awesome I'm sorry about the corn dog thing. In the fictional version of that story, I go back in time, buy a corn dog, do the whole thing, and throw it to myself. Yeah. So that's the science fiction version of the corn dog story. Everything I just said, except I don't get a random corn dog hitting a barrier in front of me and backflipping and going right between my feet as a gift for me to sling into the crowd for my own amusement. And let's face it, completely irresponsible joy. That's what that was. But again, not one to hurt people. Didn't do the stick. Didn't bring a pistol and just randomly fire into the crowd. That's just nuts. But another thing that happened a lot in the 80s was, as soon as the lights went out in a rock concert, everybody lit up a joint. That's just the way it was. Can't really do that today, especially with assigned seating. But back there when it was general admission, nobody cared. The cops didn't care. I do remember it was a little weird to do it in Pensacola. And I never smoked. Did I smoke pot? I think I did, but it got a little too hairy and we stopped. But I only went to like 2 shows there when I was still a big pothead before I went in the Marines. So, there you go. And then, by the way, speaking of this, if you are a pothead and have signed up to be in the military, you need it about 6 weeks to get it out of your system fully. So I would, maybe 2 weeks, but I would recommend 6 weeks, depending on your body composition, fat content. But yeah. And I got that from information from a friend of mine's father who did that study at Tulane University, where they were getting big bricks of weed, and they were doing stuff like lighting the brick and just putting people in it. They didn't get any in them. And then habitual smokers and the real skinny ones, everything was out in 2.5 weeks. And more portly ones, it took 6 weeks. So it's a fat stored dingus, whatever. But yeah, and there again, the weed wasn't that great then. You'd catch a buzz, and there was the good sensimilia sometimes, but for the most part, it wasn't the biggest and best, which I think means people didn't go psychotic. Is that what the problem is now with all the violence? Is that just people being psycho, or is there a signal being pumped out there that's exciting people's violent fight or flight centers with all the corn syrups and GMOs, or maybe the vax, right? And maybe now that they have the vax, they're able to, let's agitate them, make them kill each other now, right? Was that part of the plan? I don't know. Maybe that was the phase 2, all right? Go ahead and just get rid of some of the people right off the bat, but hey, hold on. Now we got all these other people. Maybe hit them with this frequency after they took this vax and they got this corn syrup and all. It's a cocktail. And another thing too is to avoid fast food restaurants that include places like Waffle House, breakfast places, and even if it's like a sit-down in restaurant, if it's kind of a turn 'em and burn 'em kind of place where it's not really expensive, you probably want to just go ahead and cook at home unless you're on the road and are doing that. And the places that are like right off highways are normally a lot safer in terms of, you're going to have maybe a state trooper nearby or maybe a sheriff's deputy either eating there or nearby. But the continued amount of videos you see at these fast food places supports my hypotheses that the poison in the food is a psychoactive detriment, therefore, butt ton of violence. And I even, being on the carnivore, I can tell you the rage I used to go on when I was eating corporate crapola food and buying the lies that carbs are the king and limit protein and red meat's bad for you and all that crap. That was the angriest period of my adult life, punching walls, kicking walls, bad news. Carnivore, I'm like a monk. Well, let's face it, I'm like a game show host, but I'm a lot calmer now than I used to be. Let's put it that way. Good thing I didn't have a show when I was a carb boy. The other thing too is people used to line up and go see movies. Anthony Cumia was talking about this morning and talked about how, you want to talk about the movie with other people, like how friends of mine and I would talk about rock concerts. You want to talk about the movie, so you want to go see the movie. So everybody in the town went to go see the movie pretty much at some point. Like Jaws, here we are, a beach town. Everybody went to go see Jaws. And, then you could do fun tricks. Like when my sister had friends spend the night, we had a pool, which is pretty nice. My mom just had this thing that, we lived in Florida now, we need to have a pool. And drove my dad nuts. But we enjoyed it. It was nice. But, and I don't know what the economic status was going on there other than it drove my dad nuts for a little while. But, with the Jaws being so heavy in the consciousness of America, I was able to do things like, my sister's friends are having a spend the night party and they're swimming in the pool. Well, I invited my friend over and we had little walkie-talkies back then, right? That was like a gift you could get when you were a kid, before phones, who knew? And I would get him to turn the lights out right when I would start playing Jaws. I had a little phonograph that I ran out there on an extension cord, and I had it all ready to go. And right when he turned the lights out, I dropped the needle and dun, 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 dun. And, of course they screamed and ran. And, there again, mischief, but not, we didn't beat them up. You don't do that. But that was cool. You would see lines of people wrapped around a movie theater when certain movies open. I did see it when the Star Wars Force Awakens came out. And then what was the other one that was really, really bad? Where Luke Skywalker was drinking the green walrus tit juice, whatever that was, and then ends up kind of disappearing, whatever. It was just a really bad movie. But there was a big line for that too. I remember not being able to find parking, and I didn't see Force Awakens, but I did go see that one because I had a thesis film at Full Sail, and one of my actors is Darth Vader. He cosplays Darth Vader. He's a big, tall guy, and he's a really good actor too. But that crowd and it wasn't even the first showing, but it was just all sold out all day, all weekend. And I remember having to park in a different parking lot and walking over to the movie theater. It was probably about a 3/4 mile walk just to get to the theater because it was so crowded. So that does happen, but it was just different in the 70s because it was more of a cultural event. Now, and Kumia covered this too, that, you can watch the same, when movie premieres, you can wait a week and just, I was like, dude, you got to go see the new Dune movie. My friend's like, yeah, I'll watch it next week because I had an 86-inch TV. It's still not the same. And, part of that is, we have a totalitarian dictatorship of sorts that uses the media to keep people stupid. Let's face it. That's a Bill Hicks quote, by the way. And you got to wonder, is that same techno-totalitarian dictatorship being used to manipulate people into violence? Is there more violence now than there used to be? I'm not sure. I know they got everybody to wear masks pretty easily. The stupidest thing ever. And in fact, I saw another guy wearing a mask just now, and it wasn't even on all the way, and he's riding a bike. And it's like, dude, what are you even doing? If you're still listening to mainstream media after what they did to us, you were ready for the surveillance state. 1984 was popular for a reason. When I was in high school, it was required reading your senior year, and we had to write a paper on it. It's not in the schools anymore. Do you think that's by design? That's not in schools, but now they're supposed to, they're doing this gender equity thing, and they're teaching kids all kinds of crazy stuff now, right? But it's like they're embroiled in the surveillance state without even knowing it. All right. Reacting to stimuli, not thinking and formulating a plan, just constantly reacting. Well, it's all out now. We found out from the CIA interview with OMG Media, O'Keefe Media Group, that they purposefully put stuff on Twitter to get people to react. Okay. So you want to think your way out of this. And I've already realized, oh, okay, well, I've been using X wrong. I've been reacting to a lot of stuff instead of just posting my own things. But they go one further. They want people to react in such a way where they're now breaking the law. so then they can go get you, right? So don't allow yourself to be coerced into reacting to stimuli, just digital stimuli. And it might just be AI. It might not even be, and also if it's not AI, it might just be a person, like a bot that's their job. They work for the FBI or CIA to troll people professionally. Why would you want to deal with that? You're already surveilled all the time anyway. Well, let them surveil somebody that creates their own destiny, creates their own reality, actively participates in content creation, and thus thinking for yourself. All right? If you're constantly just reacting to memes and writing memes and reacting to podcasts and X tweets, whatever you call that, X's, I don't know. Take a break, turn the phone off, walk away, maybe go make a meme next time before, try to engage by being a creator and not just a reactor. These kids today, I guess it'd be Gen Z and millennials, how many of them are aware there's an entire army out there aimed at their heads to manipulate their hearts and minds, right? So awareness is probably the first step in doing that. And I don't think George Orwell had any idea that those view screens that were in the apartments that kept everybody under surveillance, I don't think he had any idea that one day we'd be carrying them around. And you're going to have just people looking at these things thinking that's the reality when they forget to interact with people. Maybe that's part of the trend in violence. I do not ever want to stop the availability of different games, but also, games as a recreational thing, not as like your only life. I play some Fallout. Ironically, I love the game Fallout, but the series, you could look at my previous episode from this to find out how I feel about that. It's not good. But are they aware that there might be somebody in the background controlling what they see, thus actively engaging in manipulation? The CIA, there's a government rule, it used to be, that they're not allowed to use propaganda on its own citizens. Well, that went away during the Obama era. And this clown up there in D.C., Mike Johnson, they're still doing it. He got behind another bill to continue all that with, I don't even know the name of the act, but basically it's legal to spy on you again all the time. Ever since 9/11, they essentially took our rights for the safety, apparently, that it would give us. Well, are we really safer now with that much surveillance? We're getting ready to, by not being able to hardcore question the government, we've allowed a bunch of idiots to get up there. And now these idiots are, we may get into World War III, like literally danger for everybody because of censorship. Okay? You have 50% of the people in the United States of America dumb as a skunk because of censorship. Not that they're just dumb. It's like they choose or too lazy or don't even know they're being manipulated by mainstream media. And the consequences for that could end up being catastrophic for the entire world. So instead, we could have a beautiful future of hyper Bitcoinization where people fly around in luxury blimps and the sky's the limit on creativity and the end of poverty and abundance for all could be yours if you embrace free, true media and Bitcoin. Let's face it. Don't ever give up. When I say it's another great day in America, I'm not living in a fantasy world and don't see the problems. Is what I'm saying is The American people are strong, and we're going to get through this because freedom is popular. Thank you for your time. It's another great day in America.